All right, we're looking at relative maximum, relative minimum, and turning points. Also going to look at zeros as well of polynomial functions. All right, in this first one here, graph this using the Desmos graphing calculator. Now, we're going to get on this online. Just type this in on a search, and then we'll type this equation in. All right, so let me just get my computer over here. And you can see I typed this in. Just hit enter and or right here on this, click on this. And here's my graphing calculator coming on. So right here we're going to type this equation. I'll set it back on here. We're going to type this equation right there. So I'm going to do 5x and then just do shift 6 to the third power. And then space, you have to hit the arrow over button to get back out of the exponent. Plus 2x squared, arrow space over, minus 4x, and then plus 2. Make sure I have everything right. All right, we're good. There's the function right there. Okay. All right, so what this says on here, find all the relative maximums. All right, what is a relative maximum? Well, a relative maximum is the maximum relative to the points around it. Okay, which is what we have going on right here. This is the relative maximum because all these points around it right here are all below it. So this is the maximum value. Now, what is that relative maximum? Okay, if you use your little cursor and just click on it, there it is. That's what the maximum is. So it occurs at negative 0.667. So negative 0.667. Okay, this is the maximum value, but that's where it occurs. And I think that's what we're mostly concerned about, where it occurs at. And that's the only relative maximum on this. Now, what's the relative minimum? Okay, here's relative minimum way down here. Okay, it's relative minimum because it's the minimum value relative to those that's around it. So all these points around it right here, this is the lowest value. And here you can see the point, the coordinates. And it occurs at 0.4. So this occurs at 0.4 for x. And this is the minimum value here. It's 1.04, which you can see here, this is 1. See, each one of these blocks is 1 tall. So here's 1, and then there's 2, and then 3, and then 4. And so this is 1.2, just slightly above. Okay, that says find the zeros, and there's only one zero on it right here. So just go, take your cursor over there and click on it and look at it. There it is. That's my zero, negative 1.274. Comma 0. That's my 0. It's the only one we have. Okay, so that's how you do this. All right, let's go to the next one now. The next one we have this function. All right, so we're going to type it in there. So let me get back up here. All right, so this time we're at x to the 4th power, arrow over, so you get out of the exponent, minus 13x, shift 6 to the 2nd, arrow over to get out of the exponent, and then plus 36. And as soon as I hit it, there it is. Okay, now sometimes you might have to grab a hold of it, just click. See, I'm clicking, and you can pull it up or down so you can see your points. Okay. Now I need my relative max. So it looks like my relative max is up here somewhere. So just grab a hold of it and pull it down like this. Man, this is way up here. All right, here it is right here. There's my relative max, 0.36. So relative max occurs at 0. See 0 for x. Now, what you can do is you hit minus. I might should have just done that. Hit minus, and I could have brought it in like that, and maybe got to a little easier. So just get on that point right there, and it occurs at 0 for x. and the maximum value is 36. Okay, and what about the relative minimums? Well, there's two of them down here. See that? Okay, so this one, is that on the screen? Here we go. Negative 2.55, so it occurs at negative 2.55. And then this one is positive 2.55. So I'll put down there as positive 2.55. So there's where my relative minimums are. Okay, now, what about the zeros? All right, there's 4 zeros it looks like. Now, I might need to zoom it back up here. There you go. Yeah, you see 1, 2, 3, 4. The zeros are where it's on the x-axis. So if you just take your mouse over there and click on it, negative 3, 0. So negative 3, 0 is 1. And we got this one, that's negative 2, 0. And then we have right here, this is positive 2, 0. And I bet that's 3, 0, yep. And there's my 0. Okay. All right. One more we're going to do. Get my paper here lined up. You're having some trouble. Okay, here's the last one, and this is the long one here. Graph this one. So let me get this thing up here and we'll get her going. Okay, I've lost my, there it is. All right. So on this one now, we're going to do x to the 5. So x, shift 6, 5, and then arrow over, and then plus 2x, shift 6, 4. All right, minus 10x, shift 6 to the 3. And then minus 20x, and then shift 6, 2. And then plus 9x, and then plus 18. All right, and as soon as I do it, man, it's on there. All right, now I'm going to have to zoom out probably so I can see a little better. Oh yeah, this thing is pretty cool. All right, we got a bunch of zeros on this one, but now relative max, it looks like it comes up like this, goes down, up, down, and then up. And this is main behavior, down and up. But there's two relative maxes here. Here's relative max here, here's relative max there. So if I go over here and get my cursor, there's one is a negative 2.625. There's where one maximum is. And then there's one here, just click on it. Or negative, or a 0.197. There's where my relative maximums occur. Okay. Now relative minimums, here's a relative minimum right there. Negative 1.495. And then it looks like there's one way down here. I'm going to have to pull this thing up. I probably could zoom out just a little bit, help myself. And here it is way down here at the bottom. 2.323. So there's where my relative minimum. See, that's the relative minimum. Of all the points that's around it, it's the lowest one. Okay, then we've got our zeros. So let's bring this back out a little bit. Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros on this. So right here, negative 3, 0. Okay, right here we got negative 2, 0. Right there we got negative 1, 0. Right there we got positive 1, 0. And then we got 3, 0. And there's all my zeros. Okay. So that's using the Desmos. Now we go back to this. Now, there's problems on here that we're going to do that just have a graph already graphed, and we want to look at that graph and determine what the relative max is, which right here, here's my relative max right there, kind of looks like, and it looks like negative 2.5. So it occurs at negative 2.5. The relative mean, right here's the relative mean of all these points, that's the lowest. And that looks like it's at 0. X equals 0. It's at x equals 0. Now, this says state the number of turning points. A turning point is a point where the graph curves, like it's going up, and then all of a sudden it starts going down. And this right here is a turning point where it's not going up, it's going down now. This one has 2. 1, 2. The relative max and relative min, those are turning points. So we've got 2 of them here. Okay. On this one, see, we got 2 turning points there, 1, 2. The relative max is this one, so it looks like it's right here, negative 5.6, negative 5.5. And the relative min occurs right here, which looks like it's negative 0.5. So that's where it's at. Okay. What about this one? Okay, determine the relative max. Let's do our turning points first, because there's 1 here, 1 there, and 1 there. There's 3 turning points. Now my relative maxes, there's 2 of them. These 2 right here are relative maxes. This one's at negative 4, and this one looks like it's at 1. Okay, the relative min is right here, and that's going to be, looks like negative 1.5. It's at negative 1.5. Okay. About this one here. All right, let's look for our turning points. Here's a turning point. There's one. There's one. There's 3 turning points. Okay, the relative max, right here's relative max, and here's relative max. Because of all the points around it, it's the highest. This one occurs at negative 2. This one occurs at positive 2. The relative min is this one. That's the lowest point of those around it. And that occurs at about 1, roughly. Maybe a little bit less. Okay. Determine the relative max here. All right, look at this one. This one has no turning points. Because see right here, as this goes up and it turns, but then it keeps going up. See, turning point is when it's going up and all of a sudden it starts going back down. This one never goes down. So there's no turning points, which means it has no relative max. And it has no relative min. Okay. On this one. Okay, let's see. We got 1, 2, 3. We got 4 turning points. The relative max, here, tell you what. This is a relative max, and this is a relative max, because it's the highest of the points around it. All right. This is a min, and that's a min, because it's the lowest of the points beside it. So my relative max, here's one at negative 1, and here's one at positive 1. Negative 1 and positive 1. The relative min, this looks like negative 0.5, and this looks like 2. Okay. All right, same thing here. My turning points, 1, 2, 3 turning points. The relative max is this one, because it's the highest of the points beside it. So that occurs at 0. X equals 0. The relative mins, right here and right here. This one occurs at negative, it's kind of like negative 2.5. And this one occurs at 1.5. Okay. And then one more. the turning points here. 1, 2, 3. There's 4 turning points. What's the relative max? Right here's my relative max here and here. So this one looks like it's negative 0.5. So x equals that. And x equals 2. This one occurs at 2. Now the relative min. Okay, the relative min, right here's 1, and right there's 1. All right, this one occurs at negative 1. And this one occurs at positive 1. All right, so that's pretty simple stuff. That's relative max and min and turning points. So you try the assignment. If you need any help, give me a holler. I'll help you all I can. Have a good rest of the day.